You finally decide to rewatch all of Dragon Ball Z or check it out for the very first time. Maybe you saw pieces of it as a kid but never got a chance to watch all the way through. Or maybe a friend of yours has been telling you about it for years, but you really didn't understand the hype until now. So you go looking for it and you find out that there are two ways of watching it. But which one's right for you? Dragon Ball Z with 291 episodes, or Dragon Ball Z Kai with 167. See, both share the same story, but they have very different time commitments. So today on ThyGeekdom, let's figure out which one's right for you, understand what the differences are, and if you're really missing out by watching one versus the other. Honestly, it does matter which one you pick, even when both shows cover the same story. Though DBZ and Kai do go through the same major arcs from the Saiyan Saga to Buu, sitting through them is different enough that picking the wrong version could make you stop watching before the show really picks up. One is slower with that old school 90s anime feel, the other moves quicker and follows the manga more closely. Where they're mostly different is in their pacing, filler, voice acting, and music. Once you know how both versions of DBZ are in those areas, your decision will get a lot easier, trust me. We all know what makes Dragon Ball Z what it is. It's the show that took everything from the original Dragon Ball and scaled the stakes. Bigger fights, bigger hair, Goku going Super Saiyan for the very first time, our introduction to Vegeta as a major foe turned rival, now classic moves like the Spirit Bomb, and iconic fights like Gohan vs. Cell. These are moments that many of us grew up on, and that we've relived in clips on TikTok and YouTube. But whether you're coming back to it or finally sitting down to check it out for the very first time, the original Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball Z Kai both give you those same big moments. The only thing that changes is how you get through them. Same story, just told two different ways. Pacing is the biggest difference between the two, and it's one of the big positives of Kai, to be honest. When DBZ was airing in Japan in the late 80s and early 90s, the anime was catching up fast to Toriyama's manga, which was still being written week to week. To keep from passing it, Toei, the animation studio, had to slow things down. They added filler by stretching fights across multiple episodes and creating entire arcs that weren't even in the manga. The Garlic Jr. arc is one of the most famous examples. They bring back this villain from one of the original Dragon Ball Z movies who launches an invasion on Earth, gets defeated in about 10 episodes, but none of it ever really gets referenced again. You also have the fake Namek arc, which is similar. Bulma, Krillin, and Gohan land on what they think is Namek, only to find out it's the wrong planet. But nothing that happens there ends up really mattering later. And then there's the pacing inside the fights themselves. For example, the famous 5-minute countdown on Namek, where Frieza tells Goku the planet's about to explode, ends up taking something like 10 episodes to actually happen, which has been memed heavily throughout the years. Other notable filler includes the driver's license episodes in which Goku and Piccolo, two of the most powerful characters on Earth, get pushed by Chi-Chi into taking a driving test. These guys already can fly anywhere in seconds, but yet you're telling me they get stuck trying to parallel park? It's hilarious. You also have another episode where Gohan runs into Tao Pai Pai, a villain Goku fought all the way back in the original Dragon Ball. Back then, Tao Pai Pai was a serious threat, but at this point in the story, Gohan is so much stronger that it's barely a fair fight. And that's the joke. Longtime fans love that kind of callback, but moments like those are the exception. Most of the filler just slows things down, and for a newer audience, that can get old fast. So in 2009, Kai came out specifically to fix things. The studio went back through the original footage, cut most of the filler out, tightened up the pacing inside the actual story, cleaned up the visuals, and basically rebuilt the show. The end result is 124 episodes less, which means that without those 124 episodes, you're not really losing any of the main story by watching Dragon Ball Z Kai. The core arcs and major moments are exactly the same. Kai just cuts out the stuff that was just padding. But if you're the type that is still interested in checking out classic DBZ or both, the good news is you don't have to choose just one. Both versions are out there on streaming platforms and physical media like Blu-rays. Link in the description if you want to get them for yourselves. The other big difference between DBZ and Kai is how they sound.
It's over 9,000! It's over 8,000!
Dragon Ball Z's English dub history is a little more complicated than people realize. See, Funimation, the company that brought DBZ to the US, licensed the show back in 1996. The earliest US episodes used a Vancouver-based cast through Ocean Studios with actors like Brian Drummond as Vegeta. Later on, Funimation switched to their own in-house cast based in Texas. That's the cast a lot of fans know today, including Christopher Sabat, who provided the deeper gravelly voice for the Vegeta we know today. So, depending on which version of the dub you watched growing up, Vegeta might sound very different to you. Meanwhile, the music has its own complicated story as well. When DBZ came to the US, they didn't use the original Japanese soundtrack. The early Ocean dub had its own replacement music, but the score most fans in the West know DBZ for came later, when Funimation took everything in-house and worked with Bruce Falconer. Falconer's music had this electronic hard rock sound that made every fight feel huge. And for a lot of us growing up, that's the true sound of DBZ. It's that iconic. On the other hand, DBZ Kai went in a different direction. Originally, Kai had a brand new score by composer Kenji Yamamoto, but Toei later replaced it with the original Japanese DBZ music after some legal issues. The second half of Kai, final chapters, used yet another composer. So if you're watching Kai today, you're most likely hearing music that pulls mostly from the original Japanese score. But Kai didn't just change the music, it also tightened up the voice acting. The Texas cast came back to re-record their takes, now with years of experience playing these characters, which means everyone was at the top of their game from the start. And though there were a few people that were recasted, they were smart choices. Kid Gohan and Bulma got new voice actors, but they got it right. You probably wouldn't even know if I wouldn't have told you. The dialogue also got closer to the original manga. The best example being that in the old English dub of DBZ, when Goku turns Super Saiyan against Frieza, he calls himself
I am the hope of the universe!
While in Kai, he just wants to protect his friends and loves a good fight like in the manga.
What are you? You haven't figured it out yet. I'm the Saiyan who came all the way from Earth for the sole purpose of beating you.
Same character and scenario, but a totally different take on what's actually driving him. So if the Falconer music and 90s dub are what you grew up with, the original DBZ will likely feel like home to you. But if you're newer to the series or would rather have cleaner voice acting and dialogue closer to the manga, then DBZ Kai will probably be the best choice for you. So now, which one should you actually watch? If you're brand new to DBZ or you're coming back after a long break and want to actually finish it this time, Kai is likely going to be an easier place to start for you. The pacing keeps moving, the performances are top-notch from episode 1, and 167 episodes may seem like less of a chore compared to the original's 291 episodes. The filler you'd be skipping isn't really part of the main story, most of it isn't even really that memorable. Yes, the driver's license episode and a few other extras are worth checking out, but you can find those online anytime without having to sit through all the filler. That being said, if you watched the original as a kid and the Falconer music is part of what makes DBZ feel like DBZ to you, going back to the original is completely valid. The nostalgia is real, I get that. But for someone starting fresh today, it might be a much harder sell. One thing to know about DBZ Kai is that it is actually split into two parts. There's Dragon Ball Z Kai and then there's Dragon Ball Z Kai The Final Chapters. The Final Chapters is just the Kai version of the Buu Saga, the final arc, which came out a few years after the first part. So here's my personal recommendation of which Dragon Ball Z version you should choose. Watch Kai first, then the Final Chapters, and if you still want the filler or get curious, go online and pick out the episodes and then just watch it later. That way you get the more modern version of the full original story with less friction and without missing anything important. But if you really want it, you can always check out the bonus content later. I really think that's the best way to watch or rewatch Z today. But now that you probably know which version of Dragon Ball Z to watch, you might still have a couple questions on your mind. First, how does Dragon Ball Z fit into the bigger Dragon Ball timeline with Super, GT, and the movies? And what order should you actually watch everything? Click here for a clear breakdown of every Dragon Ball timeline in 30 minutes, or click here for the best watch order for new and returning fans.